This evening I'm going to be talking about the different machines and wheels that we were using in our last video, which was talking about the Sloyd Jig. So I'm just going to go through the different machines that I've got in the workshop and that we use when we're teaching. I'll start off by the machine which we haven't got, which is the Tormek. Adrian, who's also part of Hewn and Hone, has got a Tormek, but that's back at his place at the moment. There's nothing bad to say about a Tormek. It's the best quality machine you can get. If you've got one, it's a great starting point. And you're not going to get a better machine. However, you can get a cheaper machine, such as this. This Fox one cost £109. I got it as I think it was an ex-demo unit in a show. I'm not even sure if it had been used, but it had been on display. It's not a wonderful machine, but for £109, I think it's fairly decent. Start off with though, I'll show you what it's like now after 2 years of teaching. Not too pretty, is it? First thing, when I first got the machine, I was aware that this honing wheel wasn't actually running true. It doesn't actually matter, I never use that, but it doesn't inspire confidence, to be fair. What is really apparent though is that the wheel is out of true, and although it starts off round and a lot bigger, this has lost nearly an inch in diameter. It actually wears very quickly, but worse than that, it wears unevenly. And then as you go round, you'll actually find that the jig, you see, you'll actually grind different angles depending on where it is on the wheel. So it's really not very good. So very quickly we moved over to the CBN wheels, which don't wear. If you put a CBN wheel on this machine, apart from the noise, you can't actually tell whether you're using a Tormek or the £109 Fox. The second machine we've got in our lineup is this one, the NTS 250 Pro. I bought it off eBay. It came from China, but was delivered from Czechoslovakia. Not really quite sure where you stand with it. I have my doubts about the CE marking on it though. One thing I really don't like about it is that it came with a Euro-style plug with no earth. Maybe the earth would work if it came with an earth plug, but basically the machine isn't earthed. And using that with water doesn't seem like a good idea to me, which is why we basically haven't. We've been running with the CBN wheels, and it's very good. The wheel itself though, we did give it a quick go and it does seem to be pretty good. It hasn't worn that badly. But I say we've really just run it with the CBN dry, which takes at least one of the issues out of it. What I really liked about this machine is it's got variable speed. It did have, for about 2 or 3 minutes, it had an electronic readout showing you how fast it was going, but that broke very quickly, which again raises questions about how long it's going to last. It cost £138, so on the face of it, very reasonable, but I say not sure how long it's going to last. We'll turn it on. That's at the slowest speed, which isn't of any interest to me. You can turn it up. You could actually see that it was electronically stabilised in that if you put load on it, the machine actually worked harder to bring it up to speed. So what I found you could do, because everybody wants things to go faster, is you could put it up to full speed and then slow it down, not with my finger, but slow it down, the machine would work harder, you'd take your hand off and actually the revs would go up a bit more. So it was actually quite a clever system, but the fact that the electronic readout went pretty quickly, so it doesn't inspire confidence. But on the other hand, if you're using it with the Sloyd Jig, you're over here and you can never read that anyway. And if you're using it with a CBN wheel, you'd always have it up to maximum anyway, because there's not really any reason not to. The last machine in our lineup is the Record. It's a machine I've only had about a week, so I've got very little idea about how it's going to last long term. I am encouraged though by the fact that it comes with a 5-year guarantee. So yeah, I think really it is likely to last a reasonable amount of time. It's got variable speed, which is really useful, as I say. It doesn't have the digital display, which isn't working on the other machine, but if it did have, you wouldn't be able to read it with a Sloyd Jig, so it's not something I'm concerned about, although It's always nice to know a readout of exactly what it's doing, or the numbers, whether the numbers are exactly what the wheel's turning at. It's a different matter. Anyway, we'll turn it on and see what it does. And I can turn it up. So yeah, this honing wheel is a little bit wobbly. It's a larger diameter than the other ones, but it's not something I really use, so not overly concerned about that. It's got at the back, you can't see, it's got a you can control the friction on the drive wheel, so if you are pressing very hard and the wheel starts slipping, you can turn that up, but I would advise not ever having to press hard enough to do that, because something's probably wrong if you're pressing really hard. It does seem to be pretty good. The wheel, as I say, it's had tiny amount of use. It seems to run true. It seems to wear fairly evenly, but I can't really speak much about that. I'm going to show you on this machine the CBN wheels which we have been using, because I think that's a much better option, particularly if you've got variable speed. We'll have a look at the wheels now. This is the wheel which came off the Fox machine. To say it's worn oval and it hasn't actually lost an inch, about ½ an inch of diameter. It does, however, machines like this come with the larger diameter bore, which is really useful to know which machine you've got. This is the one from the Czech Chinese one. Again, the larger bore diameter, a better wheel. This is the record one, which is going to be very similar to the Tormek in the fact that it's got the smaller diameter bore. It doesn't need any bush, it goes directly on the 12mm shaft of the machine. So that is that one. And these are the CBN wheels that we've made up, or had made up. They have the same larger bore as the first two machines. So if you've got a machine which has got a larger bore whetstone, this will fit on straight away. You won't need anything extra. If you have a machine which has got the smaller bore, you'll need a bush which will take that up. I've fitted the CBN wheel onto the record. I used a bush and washer similar to this, which if you've got a machine with the wider bore wheels, you'll recognise, because they come with these as standard. Otherwise, you will need to purchase one. Now, what I was saying that I like about the record is it's got a variable speed. And the point of that, or it was designed so that as the wheel wore, you could turn the speed up to compensate. But the CBN opens up a different set of ideas in that you can just turn it up to full speed and run a full-size wheel at full speed, so you can grind quicker. It's not going to be running quick enough to overheat the blade, but you can remove steel quicker. So that's what we're going to be doing. Another point about running it dry is the fact that you don't have to worry about water spraying off, which could happen if you were turning it up too fast. If you've got a machine without an earth, such as the Chinese one I was showing you, that's really not a good idea. Also in winter, it's not particularly nice to have cold water spraying everywhere. And also, it's not particularly nice for your knife for water to be getting into the junction between the tang. I mean, I always try and keep my blades dry, so it's a bit of a shame to get them wet when you're sharpening them. So running dry, I think, is really good. One issue, though, is that you do get dust, which would be captured in the water. But on balance, running dry seems to be a much better option. So that's one of the reasons which we recommend the CBN wheels, is you can run them dry. The diamond wheels from Tormek, I think, are going to be very good, but you have to run them wet, so you have the same sort of speed issues. One point which I have found when I've been grinding these knives is that you can get a point where the knife isn't actually, or a jig isn't running that smoothly along the support bar, and it seemed to be more of an issue with the record than other machines I've tried. And at first I tried sanding this down with very fine paper to smooth it off, but it still kept catching and snagging. And I found that the best thing to do is to just put a little bit of oil, not even that much, tiny wipe of oil on the support bar to lubricate it, and things run much, much smoother. and it really makes a difference. If when you're grinding it's progressing in a series of jerks, your grind is going to be uneven. So a smooth, for it to run smooth along the support bar really helps. And I don't think it really matters what oil you're using, a grease or a wax, anything to lubricate it will help. And one thing which also seemed to help with is that sometimes with particularly the Mora 106s, you can get a point where there's a resonance on the blade and it'll start to ring. And for some reason the oil seems to stop this, whether it's just because the whole thing's progressing more smoothly or the oil has a slight dampening effect, I don't know, but it really did make a difference. So that's another reason to do this. And what I also found is on machines where I didn't think this was an issue, putting a bit of oil on made them, came apparent there was a slight issue, so definitely a little bit of oil is worth doing on the support bar. We'll be offering the CBN wheels, cubic bore and nitride wheels, in 3 different grits. We're just going to label them coarse, medium, fine because the conversions don't really make sense, and it's really by trial and error that we've arrived at 3 different grits that we think are the most suitable. This is the coarse one and the one which I'd probably recommend if you're just going to get one wheel. It will remove the steel quickly and still give an acceptable grind. It doesn't really matter how coarse the grind is, but there's a point where if it looks really rough, it doesn't look good, and also you will have to remove more metal to get back to a decent edge. This seems to be at the upper limit of what's reasonable, but it does remove the steel quickly, and if you've got a big batch of blades to get through, this is definitely the one I'd recommend. The medium still removes the steel pretty quickly, gives a slightly nice looking grind, but the main difference is really aesthetic. The fine will give a very nice looking grind, but it can be a bit slow, say if you've got a batch of blades to do. So if you're going to get one wheel, I would recommend the coarse, but the medium is still an option. And if you really are concerned about how it looks, then the medium is probably one to go for. If you're going to get 2, the coarse and the fine, there's no need to go through all the grits. You can easily make the jump from a coarse to a fine wheel if you want to get a very smooth looking grind. This, however, is a blade which has been ground on a medium wheel, and it's still a nice smooth grind. So it is a fairly old wheel, and that's one of the points about the CBN, is that they'll start off pretty crisp and they will soften with use. They'll carry on cutting for a long time, but they're always going to get softer. This is one of the first ones which we bought, and it's still cutting reasonably well, but it's a nice smooth grind from a medium. So that's what I'll be doing the final sharpening with in the next video. Another point I should make is that although this is the standard size wheel, 250 by 50, one thing we've done is we have softened the corners slightly. When I've been teaching it, I've noticed that although students I've been teaching, I've told them to come in flat on the wheel, occasionally people will come in at an angle, and if you do that, it's very easy, if you've got a wheel which has got a very crisp corner, to put a V-notch into the blade, and it takes quite a lot of work to remove it. Softening the corner like this makes it a bit more forgiving, and also it means the corner will last a bit longer because all the wear isn't concentrated on one point. So this is an option that we've decided on when we had these wheels made up. Another thing which I probably haven't mentioned and should mention is that when you're traversing along with the blade, you should stop the point at about the midpoint. What you don't want to do is run the tip off the edge of the blade, because at the point it does that, it can gouge in and scratch it off. And the point about the CBN is that it's only 1 layer thick, so if you do damage it, it's there for good. It's not like you can redress the stone and get back to another layer of grit. So it needs a degree of care. But having said that, for 3 years we've had these wheels and people have used them on courses, and a lot of people have dropped off the edge, and I keep telling them not to, and no one's damaged one to the point we haven't been able to use it. So they are pretty robust. So that's the CBN wheels. They're a product which we've used for quite a few years now, and we're really pleased to be able to offer them up for you to have a go with.
you.